using the term natural law today, cause and effect.
Cause and effect. Many people, again, in the New Age community don't want to believe that there's causes and effects, and that effects are driven by causes that, come first, and then manifest conditions.
What's going on, guys? You're tuning into the Cause and Effect podcast, Sunday B.Y.O.B, where we bring our own Bible, our own minds and experiences. And today we're accompanied by Pastor Jose,
Hey,
Fernando, and a special guest who goes by the name of Pastor Ro.
Thank you.
Straight out of Staten Island. We're honored to have you here. I'm going to let Pastor Jose take it away, introduce the guest properly, and give us a little backstory of how you guys know each other and what we're talking about today.
yes. And just like Chico said, we definitely want to thank the audience, acknowledge the audience. We wouldn't be here without you guys. And it's always a blessing to be here. Just in case, for those that haven't gotten the announcement in the past, we're now recording 2 times a month, just so that we could bring better quality, right? Bring a podcast, then bring the video the following week. Create that sort of content that you're able to share and really give yourself the time to dive into what we're teaching, not just hear it and, oh my God, next week is a new one.
Yeah.
Now you have the time to kind of digest what you're hearing and put it into practice, which is always our hope. When we set out to start this series out, our last series or our last episode of last year, we ended up kind of falling into this year, right? We talked about 2019 and how, we needed to kind of decipher those experiences and really meditate on what we went through. But not only 2019, but the whole decade, right? Last year closed a decade, and this year brought in a new decade. So we started talking about how, what are some of the things that we want to do in this year, 2020, right? And a lot of people are talking about 2020 vision, right? And a lot of people have made it cheesy. But I honestly feel it's a God thing. I feel that this can be something, a terminology that we bring into our lives in this year 2020, where we can say, you know what, God, I want to have clearer vision. I want to have clarity. I want to know the direction that I'm going and how to get there, right? I want a vision for my life. There's way too many people walking without vision, and the Bible says that where there is no vision, my people perish. And we're trying to keep you guys from perishing. We're trying to keep you guys on a road where it's focused and where it's driven. And that leads us to this subject. But the reason that I brought today's guest is because I haven't met many people in my life that have the focus in their personal lives and in their vocation. And in this case, he's a pastor. That I can see them and say, man, like, I want that kind of focus. I want to be able to focus like this person focuses. And today's guest is Pastor Rolando Remedios, pastor of Kuhau, Christ Uncensored House of Worship in Staten Island, lovingly called Pastor Ro by those that know and love him. And we met, how many years was it?
I want to say probably like 2008, 2009.
That was a while ago.
No, 2007, 2006.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we were both ministers. Like I was always a preacher.
2006. Yeah.
And he was a preacher / rapper.
Yeah.
And he used to just go out there and do his thing. And it just happened that in one event we were both invited.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because we both immediately linked up. Can you share from your perspective?
Yeah. I mean, we.
Spit some bars too, though.
Yeah.
Hey.
This jump would be. No,
I'm about to get a beat right now.
Don't play.
Yeah. So I remember it was kind of like it was like a cafe, right? So we had a nice cafe, and I would see this young preacher, and I was doing music. So they asked me, I would get spots in Jersey, and I would always get spots in the Bronx. And so in that one, I believe it was in Jersey, right?
Possibly.
Yeah, I believe it was in Jersey. And it was like in a lower part of a church or a basement. And it was probably maybe like 40, 50 people there. And, I remember we were at the table where they were giving the participants some food, and we were there and started kicking it. And I remember you were wearing a Mets hat, I think.
Probably.
That sounds like him. That sounds like him.
Sounds right. That sounds right.
And And you had recently become a pastor because everybody there kind of knew you, and they were like honoring you for just becoming a pastor. And I just remember looking, and I had not been a pastor there. I had been preaching already because I've been preaching since I was 17 years old, but I had not been a pastor. And so seeing him and just seeing him being a young pastor was always inspiring to me, and we kicked it ever since. I mean, we stood connected because I remember we used to talk on MySpace. Holla. We used to kick it.
Damn, y'all go back, MySpace, huh? Y'all go back.
Pastor Marquez was sliding on my DMs, but I was like,
wow.
He was the cool rapper.
Do you remember where were you on his top 5?
I don't know. I don't think I was.
Oh man, that's a problem.
Think I was.
But yeah, man, we hooked up since then, and we've done a lot of ministry together. We've been, God has used us to help a lot of people together, and and thankfully, here we are, January 30, 2020, and we're still able to say like we're still friends, we're still co-laborers, and that's always a blessing. But again, the purpose of today's podcast is just to talk about the subject of focus. If we're going to do anything of value in 2020, we're going to have to focus, right? And it's crazy because focus is free. You don't have to pay to focus. You don't have to pay anyone off to focus, but it will cost you. It's free, but it costs you something. Right, so focus comes with sacrifice. But I got these quotes from this book. I read a book called Back to Human, which impacted me profoundly because he talks about how technology, and this is a techie guy that wrote it, Dan. I don't even know. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his last name. But Back to Human, and it's someone that's very heavily involved in technology and in using technology for the benefits of his business. But he said that he's come to the realization that he has lost relationship with humans, with people, and replaced it with social media, and replaced it with text messaging, and replaced it with things that end up losing that connection. And one of the things that he wrote in his book, he says the average, and again, this is the average American. When I looked at this, I was like, none of these average Americans are related to me because we're all way over. But he says the average American still spends barely 30 minutes a day in face-to-face social communication compared to 3 hours watching television.
Damn.
3 hours, and by television, he's talking about YouTube. He's talking about videos. He's talking about our phones of entertainment.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I read another book this last year called "Amusing Ourselves to Death," where that was written in 1978. And in 1978, he already saw the danger that this new invention called the television was going to cause and was already causing. And what basically that was the thesis of his book. Like, we're amusing ourselves to death. We're amusing ourselves away from connection. We're amusing ourselves away from relationship. We're amusing ourselves away from purpose. We're amusing ourselves away from destiny. We're amusing ourselves away from that which God has created us for. And it ends up being frustrating because we blame everybody except ourselves and the amusement that we're giving ourselves. Right. And another thing, he said, a study of 1,787 young adults at the University of Pittsburgh found that just 2 hours of social media use per day doubles the risk of social isolation.
Wow. 2 hours. Fam.
Exactly. So let's think about 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours.
Listen.
If 2 hours doubles the risk.
There's people that are pulling a shift on their phone.
On social media.
9 to 5.
Yeah.
and we're battling for these likes. Yeah. And then, we're so focused on other people's lives that are usually, famous people usually aren't doing their own social media. Somebody does it for them. Yeah. So they're putting all these people's highlights on their social media, and we're looking at this and we're saying, man, I want to be like them. And God is saying, yeah, but I've created you like you. And you can't see the path that they took, and I'm trying to show you the path that I need you to take. You know, and it becomes this battle, this back and forth. And I read this book called Deep Work, right? And he talked about how Bill Gates, right? Because he has this argument, it's called Deep Work. And he shared how Bill Gates would go away for 2 hours, 2 weeks at a time to get one idea. How Steve Jobs, how Carl Jung, how all of these people would get away in order to connect on a deeper level. And them being able to get away to connect on a deeper level brought us all of these things that have been so beneficial to us.
Look at Jesus Christ going up to the mountains.
Exactly.
Like,
you're so deep, bro. It's so good.
Like when you said
exactly.
Steve Jobs, I'm
Yes.
automatically going back to the story when Jesus would
goes away.
isolate himself away
Yes.
from people, from distractions.
Yes.
And you can think of, people more relatable like a Kanye West when he was the original Kanye West, and he would say stories about staying a whole year in his room making beats.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Or even more than that. And that speaks volumes to some of what you said, sacrifices people need to make.
That's that
when they're
extreme focus, right? Rest in peace. I want to make sure I announce this guy because Kobe Bryant, the level of focus that he operated on was insane.
Mamba mentality.
And it's the Mamba mentality, and it's crazy because when you look at the Mamba mentality, one of the main tenets of that mentality is the sacrifice, number one, and the focus, number two. He was so focused that ultimately it ended up being a factor in his passing, because his focus demanded of him to practice for his career. But his focus in his family also demanded from him to be there for his family. So these two passions combined created a need for him to be able to skip that LA traffic. Any of you guys ever been to Los Angeles?
Yes.
That traffic is bonkers. Like Manhattan traffic is nothing compared to Los Angeles traffic. Nothing at all. It doesn't even compare at all. So he needed to skip that traffic in order to still be able to practice and perfect his craft, but not miss out on his daughter's life.
He was cutting out 2 hours to 10, 15
with
minutes.
A helicopter.
With a helicopter.
So that's why he opted for that mode of transportation, which ultimately, unfortunately took his life. And again, rest in peace. Let's pray for all of them. Let's pray for the families. Let's pray for those that are left behind to kind of deal with all this wreckage and pain that unfortunately is there. But that being said, that focus led us to mention him on this podcast. That focus led us for ESPN to basically be shut down for 2 days because everything was pro Kobe. That amount of focus led Los Angeles to cancel an NBA game, which is unheard of. That focus led the world. I mean, they're creating monuments of them around the world.
There was a petition going around for them to change the NBA logo to
Kobe. But it's because of something that's free, but that will cost you something. And it's focus. Right? I was interested in asking Rafi, who's kind of behind the scenes today, but he went on a retreat. I don't know if you could make it over here closer to the mics maybe. But I want you to kind of share with the audience how that retreat possibly helped you to focus and what were the results of that.
Come here, bro.
Hi.
Hey.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome.
Hey, I'm here just in case you guys thought I was nuts. I'm in the back. But so the question was, how did this retreat help me
you to focus? Or what did it help you focus on? Like, what were the results? What happened there?
It's interesting that you speak
or
about
down there. Right?
well, down there, yes.
My bad.
It's down there, but what is up and what is down, right? The philosopher in me. but I needed that in my life, man. I needed to get away from all of this, from this society, from this like I said it on my Instagram story. I was like, I needed to get away from this capitalism society that we are so accustomed to, this little rat race that we are all involved in, and not only financially, but also, with social media and stuff like that, trying to keep up with the Jonases. It could be overwhelming, and you could get to a point where you feel like that's everything, because we do live in a bubble. If you really think about it, we live in a world where we are, thankfully, we don't have to deal with bombs, certain level of poverty, a certain level of lack of hygienes. I had the opportunity to go to Ecuador, which was an incredible experience for me because I got to see a different part of the world that, I haven't been in touch with in so long, because I'm Dominican, and I travel to the Dominican Republic. I used to travel often. It's been a few years, actually almost a decade since I've been to DR, which I need to get in touch with that. But, I went over there and I got to see, poverty in a different level. But I saw joy and I saw happiness there. You know what I mean? I saw people being satisfied with being where they're at, being who they are, and just a smile on their face. Doesn't matter how hard it might seem to me. I'm like, wow, like what they're doing right now, I couldn't see myself doing. But then again, they're doing it with a smile on their face, and I was baffled by it. And at the same time, I felt humbled because it's like, wow, that they find joy in the simplest things. Yet me, I'm over here complaining, I gotta get this, I gotta get that, I gotta, appear a certain way in order for me to please, the crowds or to seem like, I'm a part of this society. And what he helped me, bringing it back to the question, when it came to focus, and he helped me like, it widened my perspective, to care less about what's going on around the world. And by the world, I mean America. And focus more on what makes me happy. Focus more on what I need to do in order for me to fulfill my calling here. Because, being over there, being in touch with nature, being by the trees, being by people that are so humble and so in touch with earth, literally, like they're really, like, so many trees. I'm not used to that, so many trees. Like, the air smells different. The water tastes different in a good way. And it just brought me back down to earth, and it made me realize that there's more to life than this.
In one of those videos, I don't know if it was a video or you posted it as a caption in one of your pictures, you talked about the noise.
Yeah.
How you needed to get away from the noise.
Yes.
Right, and I think I want you to kind of talk about that a little bit, only because I think we've gotten accustomed to the noise where the noise is normal and we don't consider it noise. We consider it normal, and we consider silence noise.
Yeah. Because we hear the noises in our head. When there's silence around us, it's the noise in our head. It's just us speaking. I'm glad you pointed that out. That completely went over my head. I forgot I mentioned that. And yes, the noise.
Yeah, pay attention to your social
Thank you,
media,
man.
bro.
That means everything. That makes me feel special. But yeah. So the noise, like I mentioned a little bit before, but to emphasize a little bit more now, is the noise of you gotta. There's a certain how you call it, like a certain status of living, I guess, that's required for you to be comfortable in this society. You know what I mean? There's a lot of laws. There's a lot of things that play a part into it. And us paying attention to everybody. Like I said, us keeping up with the Jonases. That's something that it's very loud in our ears. Like, okay, we gotta be house owners. We gotta live comfortably. We gotta have nice cars. We gotta dress nice. We gotta travel a lot. Whatever. That's like a lot of noise in our ears, especially coming from social media. That's all we see. We see people showing their best parts, and we always hear that, like, people, and we know it ourselves because we do it ourselves. People only expose their best parts on social media. They rarely expose their struggle.
True.
You know what I mean? And that's all we are used to seeing. So to me, that's a lot of noise. Like, I needed to get away from all of that because that's all I kept on seeing, too.
Yes.
And we might not want to admit to the fact that it influences us and that it affects our life in one way or another, but it really does. Everything we see, everything we hear, it truly does affect us. So I needed a break from all of that because I was going crazy. In my mind, I'm like, yo, listen, I'm having a tough time keeping up.
Yes.
Do I really need to keep up? Is this really what life is about?
Yes.
I started questioning all of that. So I'm like, I need to get away from this. I need to retreat myself, regroup myself, and get myself like situated.
Every
like,
word, refresh.
Yeah, refresh all of that. Because I was like, this cannot be life. In general, this cannot be life. So I needed to quiet down the noise. That's why I wanted to go to the mountains. I didn't want to go to the city. I didn't want to go to no four-story store. I didn't want to be around all of that, technology. I wanted to be away from technology. I wanted to be away from social media. They had a little bit of Wi-Fi, enough for me to actually like tell my friends that I made it safe, tell my mother that I'm good, let them know, like, continuously throughout the week that I'm still here. Nobody kidnapped me.
Haven't been kidnapped.
Yeah, I haven't been kidnapped. So just enough for that, and that's all I needed. Besides that, I was good. At first it was a little struggle, though, because you get to know yourself a little bit better. Like, oh, you start itching for that phone. Like, I look at my phone, I'm like, I have no Wi-Fi. What the heck am I looking at? So I started leaving my phone in the room little by little, because I'm like, I don't need this. But then it's so liberating, knowing that everybody else around you is on the same page. So it's like a different society too. You surround yourself by different people. They are on the same page. Like, they don't have no Wi-Fi. They're just happy and loving and caring, and that made me feel so good, because you don't see that often here. People that love. Where I was at, there was no handshakes. We were hugging. Wow. That's all we did. Hug, come here, hug. And I'm like, all right. That was weird to me at first, but I'm like, little by little, I got used to it. I'm like, this is what it's really all about.
So you got to take Chico with you next time. Get some hugging in his life.
I'll push you away.
But that's exactly, like, I knew Rafi was gonna add something tonight, because again, like, he was there. He just went through that experience, right? Yeah. And when that's what I mean. If we're gonna obtain this focus, that we need to have that clarity that we want in 2020, we have to be willing to do a sacrifice. For Rafi, it was both financial, right? It was both time, right? He had to separate some time. Saying yes to that vacation meant saying no to this one, right? Because when you say yes to something, whether you want to admit this to yourself or not, you're saying no to something else.
Yes.
And when you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. Yeah. So our goal in this podcast is to get you encouraged enough to say no to the noise, so that you can say yes to the silence that's going to get you in tune with you.
Yes.
Because being in tune with you will ultimately get you in tune with God. And getting in tune with God will lead you to the future that God has for you. Now, I know you have your own way of focusing. What's something that you do?
Yeah. Well, honestly,
or some of the things you do. I'm sorry.
For me, it's knowing what I want to be, right? So, like, for me, focus comes from a perspective of, like, what do I want to become, right? So sometimes we think about what is it that we need to do and what we need to get done. And so we schedule our lives based upon, like, the things that we need to do and we need to get done. For me, so, like, when I first became a pastor, it's like there's so much to get done. There's so much to do. What's important, right? So you don't know what to focus on if you don't know what's important. But you don't know what's important if you don't know what you want to become. And you don't know what you want to become unless you know what God has called you to do. And so for me, it's all predicated on purpose. Even that verse you started up with my people perish. I like the Message translation. It says it's something like, when we don't know what God wants for us, we stumble all over the place. Like, how many times we're stumbling, not because we're just making bad decisions, not because we're not prioritizing. It's because we really don't know what God wants, or what God is leading us or showing us. And so for me, based on that, it's easy to say no to the things that don't add to what you want to become.
So would you say knowing what you want to become becomes a filter for everything else? So
it's easy to not. So, and this has been a practice of mine. So I'll give you an example. So for me, let's say Wednesdays and Thursdays, you will not catch me during the day, right? Now, for me, some people might be like, yo, but what if I need you? What if you will not catch me Wednesdays and Thursdays if I've already had programmed, this is my sermon prep time. So usually Wednesdays is my time where I just devote to studying for the message on Sunday. And so I like to just fill myself with as much information on Wednesday on the topic that I want to share, with the series that we're in. And then Thursday, I create the outline and put it all together. And so what we don't understand is that one of the things that interrupt our focus is these little micro distractions. It's like these little and what happens is that it create like if you I actually read a book on this as well. You know, Caroline Leaf talks about it a lot. And there's these little moments where you're constantly reset. So we're never able to go deep, right? So we're never. And then in my field, I'm kind of required to go deep, right? But when you have these notifications go, I mean, you think about, right, notifications on social media, right? Instagram, Facebook. You have these notifications, and depending how many friends and followers you have, and then you got your notifications through Messenger. So for me, right, that's shut off. My notifications are completely shut off. I'm talking about Messenger, phone call. That's all shut off during that time that I need to focus. And that's just using that as a little microcosm of what your focus in life should be. But this is just in a moment. And so for me, the only one that has access to me are my children, and they know how to reach me if I'm not on the phone, and my wife, because those are the only people that I really need to reach me during that time. If there's an emergency, everything's always in place. I already have those things in place. But that's just a little, again, like I said, a little example in a moment of what can be seen in an entire life. Because at that moment, the thing that I prioritize the most is what I need to become.
Yes.
Those distractions might seem micro, but they're like a snowball rolling, coming down a hill.
Exactly.
They get bigger and bigger and bigger.
And that's why we don't
just
pay
get
attention
lost
to them.
in that. Yeah, we don't.
Because there are these little micro distractions that accumulate, and what they do to the brain is they reset you.
Yes.
Right? And so, like, you never really get to spend, like you were talking about, like, being in the silence and shutting the noise that's outside of you, but then having to deal with the noise that's inside of you. And so for me, that's when you see that happen is because you're not. Our society contributes to that. So I notice even with my own children, I have a 14-year-old and I have an 11-year-old. I know you're thinking, like, I don't look old enough to have one, but God bless you. But you know, when they're, I've had to even put regulations when it comes to their phones, because you imagine, right? Like you were talking about just 2 hours being on the phone. Can you imagine that we have our own personal television on a regular basis? You know, they're not on social media, but they are on their device. And what I've told them is that you have not learned to be comfortable in your own thoughts.
Yes.
A lot of us are not used to being comfortable in our own thoughts. Heck, myself, I wasn't used to being comfortable in my own thoughts. I had to get away from it all.
And that's why we never end up dealing with the issues that need to be dealt with, because every time something surfaces, we find a song to cover that with. You know, or we find a movie to cover it with, or we find something else.
You know what's funny? I since I came back, you know, I've been a little bit more involved with social media, and I've been watching, and a lot of girls, like, in their Insta snap, they're okay with saying they're toxic. They come up with these little memes. I don't know if you noticed, right? These memes like, la 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 la, this means I'm toxic, and they just laugh it off. And it's like, you know your behaviors are toxic. You find this funny, but you're not willing to sit down and actually like face like, is this normal? Like to them, it's normal because they like. Just
the thing is, they find it funny because we're still laughing. So as long as we're still laughing, we're creating a market for that type of toxicity.
Yeah, and then it's
embraced.
Sad. It's embraced because what's TV shows like these reality shows? What are they showing? These
toxic
reality shows is toxic friendships,
friendships.
relationships, marriages, and they highlight it, and people make memes out of them on Instagram, and then what happens is it becomes this thing where I like this person.
Some people get paid for it. Like
person,
it becomes,
you know?
It becomes a price thing too. Yeah. Like distraction. I did a study one time on focus. That's why this is so dear to me. Because it's something that I struggle with. Like, let me put that out there. Like, I'm not talking about like I got this science down packed. Nah, like I struggle sometimes with being able to focus.
I think you could say that.
And then they would light the horse's tail on fire, so they would run in opposite directions. Wow. They called this form of torture distraction. Wow. So this is why, like, the enemy right now, like when I talk about the enemy, I'm talking about the devil. Like I feel like we don't mention that a lot of times in different, venues. But if we believe in God and in Jesus and in the Bible, we can't go without mentioning the enemy. Yeah. Now, the enemy doesn't come at you with a pitchfork and horns and moves and shakes and scares you. He's not trying to scare you anymore because movies have desensitized us to being afraid of those kind of things. Right. We've seen them over and over and over in TV shows and movies. So he doesn't do that. I feel the enemy's greatest weapon today is distraction. Mm-hmm. Because if he can't stop you, he'll just get you busy.
Yeah. And it's getting louder and louder.
He'll get you busy and he'll get you deaf with the noise.
Yeah, I'm stuck on the noise because that's what's going on.
That for me, my moments to be in my thoughts or in my car. Like, music helps organize my feelings, but when I turn the music off, I normally have my greatest ideas or what seems to be something that I can like write down, and as when I'm driving, completely silent in my car and just driving around in circles, or if I'm heading to a place that's long enough for me to just sit down and kind of think through things like how do I feel this morning, or how my day's been going, or something that's been troubling me, whatever it is. Those are my moments to have that. You know
why I feel like a lot of people don't ask the deep questions like that too is because of trauma, and they bury trauma. They buried it so deep that they never really bother to question it. And if you don't bother to question those triggers, then you won't bother to question how you feel today. People don't have time. People feel like they don't have time to question how they feel today because they're so caught up. Like, okay, I gotta. First of all, let me see what's going on Instagram. Second off, I gotta get my breakfast and my morning routine ready for me to go to work. And then they get to work and they're stressed out because whatever happens at work, you know what I mean? Then they gotta work. They gotta worry about either family or whatever the case is. So they don't have time, or they don't make the time to actually sit down. And
so scared to feel like that.
They're scared. People fear.
That sadness. They don't want to feel those unexplainable thoughts.
Yeah.
That unexplainable feeling because they haven't dig deep enough to actually know why they feel.
And they don't bother to look outside themselves because sometimes the answer is not necessarily always inside. Sometimes it's outside. Because if you look outside of yourself, you're able to make sense of what's going on inside. That's why I like to read a lot. That's why I like to look at history a lot. That's why I like to sit down in masterminds like this and hear people's perspectives so I can make sense of what the heck is going on in my mind. You know what I mean? I feel like that's important, for all of us to do, to either live with people like yourselves or online, because online is a double-edged sword. The website, or
it could be a blessing.
It could be a blessing or a curse. But right now, it's being more of a curse than a blessing in many cases because people don't know how to use it. People just use it to entertain themselves and actually bury deeper their traumas and their problems instead of actually facing them. So I feel like if you face, I'm gonna bring it back full circle. I feel like if you face all of that, and at least come clear with it, spend some time there, a month, 2 months, whatever time it takes for you to actually come clear and be real with yourself, then you'll probably be able to quiet down the noise that's going on around you and focus on what it is that really matters to you, because a lot of people don't know what matters to them. What the heck matters to you? Ask yourself that question. What matters to me? What do I care about really? What do I really want in life? And it's not far-fetched because, we are limited by our surroundings. We think that, okay, if you're surrounded, let's say, by crime, let's say by violence, let's say by no love, that the whole world is like that, and it's not. There's so much diversity in this world. All you got to do is actually just be willing to step out of that world that you're in, quiet that noise, and believe that there's something else out there, because there is. Trust me, there is. There's everything out there. This world is full of everything.
There's a whole world, right?
Exactly.
And, bro, when I think about Jesus, like no one was more sought after in those 3.5 years of ministry than Jesus. The Bible says that people would jump on boats when they knew he was going to be in a different part and be on the island before Jesus even got there.
Yeah.
But the Bible also says that Jesus would retreat himself and go to solitary places alone.
Yeah.
In other words, before he met the needs of all these people, he understood that he had to meet his own need first.
Yeah.
And his own need was to be in fellowship with his Father. He knew I gotta talk to my Father. I gotta talk to God. I gotta talk to God the Father and be in connection with him. Because how can I help them if I need help? How can I rescue them if I need rescuing? So Jesus understood, if I'm gonna be a blessing to anyone, if I'm gonna be the savior of the world, first I need to focus.
Yeah.
That's why he went, like you said it, when he went up to the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. What did he? He retreated. He ain't asked nobody to go with him. And the big thing about that is that came on the heels of a prior event where Jesus is baptized. He comes out of the water, and everyone that was being baptized, that they heard a voice from heaven that said, "This is my beloved son."
Yeah.
There was an announcement made from heaven. Listen to me. If this was to happen in Patterson and you hear somebody tell me, Marquez is my beloved son, right? We always imagine God's voice being like that. Think about something this big, something of this magnitude occurring. What would most human beings do today? They're writing a book about it. They're doing podcasts about it. They're doing all of these things about it. They're recording it. They're going crazy.
Can you say that again, please?
But the Bible says that Jesus, on the heels of hearing that, and everyone else hearing that announcement,
Went away.
He goes away
Can I?
to gain his focus, not to regain it, but to gain it. But then throughout his 3 years, he continued this practice to regain it.
Yeah.
To regain it. Because when you're in the midst of being successful, you can lose your focus.
Can I emphasize on that a little bit?
Which is why you got to know about becoming. You got to know what it is that you want to be.
Yeah.
Because if you know what it is that you want to be, you're able to refocus.
Yeah. No. I'm sorry. I want to catch this thought because going off of what all three of you guys have been saying, I just wanted to say, when you said that when you emphasized on Jesus, I also realized that he knew who he was and who he needed to be for the people.
Yes.
And then going back to what you were saying, who do you want to become?
Yeah.
Where did that thought come from for you a strategy?
So I mean, it was helpful. So when I first went full time, I knew that I went full time about 3.5, 4 years ago. And that's really when I started realizing, number one, that that I have been molded and formed by society, by the 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. And so once I resigned my job and I went full-time ministry, now you go from...
Which a lot of people said you were crazy for doing.
Correct. And when I moved into that, I knew that I was being led by the Lord, right? Mm-hmm. So that's another thing. Even in your example with Jesus, it says he was led by the Spirit. Yes. So going back to that scriptures in Proverbs where it says, if you can't see what God is doing, you'll stumble all over the place. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, he heard that voice from his father, but then he also got the update of, hey, go into the wilderness. He was led by the Spirit, right? And so for me, I knew that the Spirit of God was leading me to go full-time, and I went full-time. And then what started happening is I kind of fell into this, like, I don't want to say a depression, but somewhat of this odd, unusual feeling that I've never experienced in my life. Wow. Right? So all I've been asking God was to move full-time, become full-time, so I could do everything you've called me to do. But then there was this, like, mindset that I had of, well, how do I prioritize? How do I know what to do? And so what I started realizing is that I was doing what was urgent, but not what was important. And I learned that's when I started learning from a pastor that I love. His name is Craig Rochelle, pastors the largest church in America. And when he spoke that, when he shared that, he was saying that we schedule our lives based upon what we need to do and what's urgent. And so for me, it was like, yeah, if people want to meet with me, I'm meeting me. Why? Because I'm a pastor and I need to meet with them. Mm-hmm. Not realizing, oh, somebody's in the hospital, I gotta go. So I was doing what was urgent. And so my life was really pulled at the direction of people's pace, not at the one that God set for me. You know, and so it wasn't until, so that happened actually for the first 2 years. Now, I consider myself a pretty intelligent guy, a pretty guy that is disciplined. And even with all that, I felt lost in those kind of like that 1.5 to 2 years. Mm-hmm. I literally felt like, again, it wasn't this depression, but it was somewhat of like a loneliness, you know, kind of, it felt like almost like a wilderness experience. Mm-hmm. It's everything I wanted, right? So what I wanted, all I wanted was to go full time. And God gave me that avenue, and I resigned from my job. And then I'm like, I used to tell my wife, I was like, baby, sometimes I feel like I feel so out of pace. Like I feel like I've lost my rhythm, because all I've been used to is a 9 to 5. I've been used to, you punch in and you punch out. I don't have a rhythm. I don't have a flow. And the reason that I didn't have a flow is because when you go to 9 to 5, you get told what to do. You do what you do. You get a thumbs up. You get a raise, right? When you are now just living off where you're the CEO of your life, right? Where you're the one you have to be led by the Spirit, right? And so for me, once I kind of like internalized that, and I was like, and so one of the things that Craig Rochelle says from the beginning, he says, like, I need to go to the gym. He goes, I go every single day to the gym. And some people might say, well, that's not very passive. Like, you might need to go do this. That might be more important. And he says, no, that might be an urgent situation. But what's most important, you don't understand. If I don't go to the gym, I'm not good for anybody. There's something that comes out of going to the gym that allows me to be good for everybody. And so in his life, he knew who he wanted to become, right? He knew the goals that he had based upon who he wanted to become. And then he organized his schedule based upon who he wanted to become. And so many times, like, we want to become something, but we don't schedule our lives based upon what we're going to become. So for me, I started prioritizing. So for me, I'm a communicator. That's what I do. I communicate in I communicate in writing, communicating in front of people. I communicate in meetings. I communicate in one-on-one sessions, right? And so
it shows.
Thank you. Well, so I had to be. For me, it was like I had to prioritize and become a communicator. I had to become, what did I want to become? I wanted to become a great leader.
Talking to me right now, boy.
Right? So I want to become a great leader. So what do? I'm not going to just overnight become a great leader, right? I have to prioritize. And so I scheduled in my life things that I do to become a better communicator. I schedule in my life as a priority things that I need to do, not because they're urgent, not because there's an immediate result. It's because that's who I want to become. I want to become a great leader. And so in order for me to do that, I have to study the best leaders. And obviously you become you have your own unique twist to it, right? And so for me, I dedicate just on my week, right? So but again, a lot of that is not quantifiable, because it's like it's not like
it's not measurable.
You put in 2 hours and then you're gonna get, you make $25 an hour. Well, I'm gonna get $50 because I just put 2 hours into this. No, you don't see that in that level of growth. You see it in the long term, but not in the immediate. Which is another thing about focus, is that there is a lack of focus in our society, and it's not to blame in a sense in this generation, but there is a lack of focus in this generation because there isn't enough stick-to-itness. There isn't enough like, hey, I got to do this long enough to see a result. And that's a focus, right? I'm going to focus on this, and I'm going to stick to it. Yes. We there is a huge distraction where, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, and so
because everybody's so used to seeing the results all the time. They don't bother. They don't really see the process.
Everything's
so it's like I'm an entrepreneur, and I started this business, and man, I've been grinding for 3 months. No results.
That's
okay,
so good.
You might need to grind for 3 years.
So would you say
3 years is
the first thing was
like a little bit?
It's a little.
Yeah.
Would you say first? So what helped you focus? Would you say it was first I knew who I wanted to become, then determining how to get there? This is how I can get there, and then creating the boundaries or the priorities to fit with the answers to the prior two. Things mentioned.
So obviously it's all in my life.
Yes.
In my life, in my life it's been kind of like I thank God that I've always had that kind of like. I heard a prophet one time, and I always kind of share this quote because it makes me laugh because I feel lucky. But I heard this prophet one time. He said, "Man, God," he said it in Spanish. He says, and I'll translate, "Dios me cuenta los chismos de todo el mundo, pero no de los míos." And which is to say, he goes, God tells me the gossip and the information of everybody else, but I never know what's going on for my life. And I said, and to my own life, I remember looking at my wife, I said, yo, man, I feel lucky because I don't know anybody else's business. But God always kind of like I always feel like God has always shown me the next step for my life.
Amen.
You know, and again, I don't know, you know, I can't pinpoint it, but I've always felt like the next step. So I knew when God called me to go full time, it was like, you're going full time. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go full time. And so to answer the question, it's all spirit led, I want to say. So it's always kind of like with this kind of like feeling, this sense, if you want to call it, you know, this gut feeling, like you know in your knower. I like the way Judah Smith says it. He says, and T.D. Jakes, he says, you know in your knower that this is the thing that you should do. So for me, it started in knowing that, right? And knowing that, and then the Lord leads you to that next step, and then it's one step at a time. So that next step is, it's knowing who you want to become. Who do I want to be 5 years from now? Who do I want to be 10 years from now? And so for me, it was like, I have a goal. Like I want to be a great leader and a great communicator. And this is just a personal goal, right? So for me, it's our church, right? As a pastor, there's a goal. Like I have a goal of being the largest church in Staten Island, right? Mm-hmm. And so that doesn't just happen overnight, right? That has something you know what you want to be, and then you prioritize based on that.
Yes.
I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
But before that, I'm going to share a little bit about me. Before I left to Ecuador, before I even planned on going over there, I was stressed out. I was just stressing about where my life was heading, where my life was at, where my life was heading. Yeah. Like, I didn't know where I wanted to be at, bringing it back because of the noise. There was a lot of noise going on, and I was so distracted. And, you know, when you're stressed out, you tend to just focus mostly on you. You don't care about what's going on with anybody else's life. You might ask people, how you doing, how you feeling, whatever. Keep it, like, generic. But you don't really... Like, you're not really in tune with anybody else. You're too caught up in your own head. At least for me, that was my case. Yeah. And then it's when I realized, like, okay, something is wrong here. I got to disconnect and get away from all of this because I'm being toxic to myself right now. Mm-hmm. And it's stressing me out, and anxiety was hitting me high because I just didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know what my purpose was. And I'm glad that the idea came to me of, you know, stepping back, retreating, and taking this retreat and just silencing everything. And it was important for me to do that because, you know, I had the opportunity to meditate, you know, to really think deeply, what's my purpose in this world? And I'm thankful to God that while I was over there, I was able to find that, you know, and I was able to have people around me that were able to confirm that for me, you know, be able to, like, tell me, like, yo, this is what you're good at. You're great at that. And I shared to them my revelation, and they told me that makes a lot of sense because you have the charisma, you have the attitude, it shows. And I was like, great, that's the sign, that's all I needed. If it feels good in my heart, and you guys are confirming it. And, you know, I learned a lot of great habits out there that I was able to bring back to be able to keep me focused and doing what I need to do, you know. But it's one thing to learn those things and practice them once or twice or 3 times, you know, because I've been practicing it a few times since I got back. Yeah. But it's another thing to keep it as a habit constantly because there's many times that I have adopted good habits and I do it for a while and they do me good. But then it's like them old habits. Knock anything out the way, and I come up with more excuses as to why forget that I shouldn't even do it. Right now, my main goal is, though, to make it a priority. I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is meditate. Right after that, I get on my knees, and I'm grateful for everything that's around me. Like I start giving thanks for things. You know, and it starts off my day good because today I had certain incidents that before I went to Ecuador would have had me stressed the fuck out. But, you know, thinking about the things that I said earlier, the gratitude, you know, thinking about, you know, how I am everything and nothing at the same time. And things like that, you know, keep me afloat and keep my attitude up high. Like right now, I would have came in depressed if it wouldn't have been because of what I did this morning. So those are good rituals that actually are helping me out. But my main goal is to keep them going. But my question to you is, you know, what is it? And I'll pass this mic to Fernando as soon as I finish with my question. But what is it that, you know, keeps you going every day to hold on to that routine? Because once you make it a routine, it's a routine. There's no stepping back from it. But at the beginning, the first month, the first 2 months, it's difficult for you to keep a hold of those things that you know they are good for you. And it's so easy to fall back into old habits because you come up with all these excuses like, I'll do that later. Oh, I don't have time right now. You know what? Today I'm going to make an exception because I got this, whatever the heck it is. Like, You seem like you are very, like you talked about the guy that works out, like the gym is his priority. Same thing with you, you know what I mean? Whatever rituals you have, those are your priorities in order for you to be able to serve the world in a better way. So how do you manage to, or how did you manage to make that a habit and keep it without letting it go? Because a lot of people have that trouble. Like, they might be like, you know what? You like to use the gym as an example always because people, you know, start the gym on January, go for a month, and then after that, excuses come up, and then
January
they slack
13th,
off.
the worst day in history. That's when everybody gives up on their goals.
And that's it. You know, they drop it, and they forget all about it until next year or whatever the case is. So it's like, how do you stop that cycle from happening for yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, honestly, I have to go back to that thing of when you know who you want to become, right? When you know that, because everybody picks up on good habits, and sometimes we just pick up on them because they're good habits, but we don't know why, right? So we just pick up, it's just a good thing to pick up, you know, and you could pick up on good habits, but those good habits could die quickly if there isn't anything that is anchored on, you know, if it's not anchored to something that's a lot stronger than just picking up on a good habit. And so you might do meditation, right? And so if meditation is only based on being the antidote to a situation, then once you feel that those symptoms of that situation go away, you're going to stop meditating.
That's so good.
You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Right? So, but if meditation is about who you want to become, then it doesn't matter because you're always going to continue to do that because, like you said about Jesus, he went away, but he also maintained
so good.
in his presence, right? You called it. He kept regaining it, but right? He could just continue that practice. And so for me, let me tell you. So like for me, when it comes to, so I kind of have used this principle in my own life, and I don't share this all the time because sometimes it kind of sounds a little. I don't ever want to communicate like I'm a standard, or, you know, I always, because, you know, sometimes you always fall short of your own standards, and I never want to pontificate like, yeah, let me give you the principles of A, B, C, and D.
You
But
you don't want to say something and then get caught slipping.
yeah, no, it's not that. It's more like I don't want to ever come off like again, like I have achieved all these things and I'm beyond them or anything like that. This is always a work in progress. And so for me, it's just a practice. I know who I want to become. And because of that, I know that there's a certain amount of time that I kind of devote to God, right? Like I love this principle of the Sabbath. This principle of the Sabbath, where we're talking about meditation, right, comes from the Old Testament in the Bible. And the idea behind it was, the idea behind the Sabbath was that God's people would rest. Right? And when he would rest, all the other nations would work. But the idea behind it was that God would supply more in them working 6 days a week compared to the nations around them that were working 7 days a week, in order that the other nations would look at this nation who is abundantly blessed. I mean, they have crops, they have cattle, they have everything, but they only work 6 days a week. How? Meanwhile, we're working 7 days a week. We're grinding. We're going after it. How are they more blessed than us? And the idea behind it was that God could do more in 6 days than you can do in 7 on your own strength. That was the whole principle, right? So the Sabbath is always seen as a good thing. That's why Jesus comes into the New Testament. He says it wasn't that Sabbath was made for men. Sabbath was made for men, not man for the Sabbath, right? And so there's this idea that Sabbath is supposed to be a gift to us, right? So I say that because sometimes this is what I believe. I believe God could do more with the time you devote to him than all the time that you can have on your own. So, for example, we're given 24 hours a day, every day. And so how much of that time do you devote in what you want to become versus what you need to do? Right? So what I need to do, so I divide that. So for me, there's 24 hours in a day. I use the principle of the tithe. So for me, this is me. I'm not saying this is for everybody. I'm just saying this is for me. I look to devote my first 2.5 hours in spending just some time with God. Now let me tell you, there's some times that those moments are just like, whoo, you feel it. Like you singing, you crying, you're like in it. You're like, you're reading the word. You're just like in it. And there's some times you're just like, all right, I got 34 more minutes.
Yeah.
You know, you're just waiting for the time to go by, you know? And so the reason I'm saying that is because
Hey, we're humans.
you're waiting for the time to go by. And I say that because it's not always going to feel pleasant.
Yeah.
It's not going to always feel good, you know? But that's a commitment that I've made.
Can you emphasize on that a little bit more? Like because that's one thing. That's the reason why we stop doing things, because it's not pleasant.
Yeah.
After a while, at first it's
Yeah.
pleasant, but then it gets boring.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna reiterate, just in case the audience didn't hear that. He asked to reiterate the fact of the unpleasantness that comes with doing something over and over again.
Yeah.
How do you overcome it?
Yeah. So, you know, again, I want to, without sounding redundant, you know, for me, it's also the focus of, hey, I know that this is the commitment I've made, right? And I know that for me, it's a devotion in my life. And so I'm committed to that. And because I'm committed to that, and I know that I might not feel what it's producing, right? I might not feel it, but I know it's producing. Right?
Delayed gratification.
Yeah, I don't. So I'll give you an idea. So an example. I dislocated my shoulder. So when you were talking about the horses being pulled, I can relate distraction. And my shoulder was dislocated, and every day you go to rehab or what's called physical therapy. You go to physical therapy every other day. I was doing it a couple times a week. You go to physical therapy, and every single session you kind of do the same thing. They stretch you out. You do the exercises. You don't feel no different. You just go. And then one day, you're just like, oh snap, oh snap. Now in the session, you don't feel healing. You don't feel recovery.
That reminds me of Karate Kid.
You don't feel any of that. I'm telling you.
Wax on, wax off.
Right?
Wax on,
But
wax
I
off.
know this. I have to go. Because when I go, I'm going to get better. Even though I don't feel like I'm getting better.
That's 100%.
I don't feel like I'm getting better. But I remember I called Lisa. I was like, baby. Oh, snap. My arm could go all the way up.
It's not snap.
And it was, and it happened. But it's just that. And kind of bringing it with the full circle with the focus, it's that sometimes you just got to stick to something long enough.
Yes.
Right? Like there's this guy, I forget what's his name. He's a rapper, famous rapper. Young kid, long hair.
That's a lot of them.
Most of them.
Russ.
Okay.
Russ.
Yeah. Man,
Heard his
Russ.
story, right?
10 years.
Guys grinding for 10 to 11 years.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like his 10th or 11th year that he actually started making enough money to do this for a living. And then from that 10th year, now he's a millionaire.
Bro.
But it started after 10 years. Like you can literally go back on his YouTube and you can see the video that is like,
his
only a
basement.
few hits, only a few views, and you could see that process and see, wow, this guy could have easily quit, but he didn't see the fruit until 11 years. There's this guy right now in the UFC named Jorge Masvidal, a Cuban guy, who I'm Cuban, by the way, so he's from Miami, like the guy, right? Cuban, and so this guy has been in the mixed martial arts scene for 16 years. Can I tell you when he became famous? Last year.
Wow.
Last year. And so I'm talking about 16. Now, believe me, if there's something that I want is immediate results, right? Like you just want those results, but you have to, along with focus, what people have also said is persistence, right? So focus coupled with not just being focused for the moment, but being persistent in what you're focused. There with John Jones, he's right there with Israel Adesanya. He is essentially the second most famous guy in the UFC, and it only happened last year.
And
a
a
lot
lot
of-
with
yeah.
that focus. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that a lot of people would say that he did it in 1 year versus thinking about the 16 years. The same thing with Russ. Everybody was calling him an industry plant, but not seeing the fact that he grinded for 10 years. And not only did he grind for 10 years, he dropped a song every week for 10 years, 11 years. Like it wasn't like, let me drop an album and next year I'm still a rapper. No, I'm a rapper every single week, every single day I'm dropping a song. And I have to make the beats on my own. I have to make the singing part, the rap, and I gotta make it knock. And he did that consistently. So when you talk about those things, it's just not just saying I'm an entrepreneur. You gotta be an entrepreneur. You gotta live it. And then these people lived it. 16 years active, 11 years active. You know, a lot of us would say we're entrepreneurs, but how out of those, we were entrepreneurs for 5 years, and I never made $1 million. How long in those 5 years were you active?
That's so good.
And
it's that focus,
you know,
man. Like that focused energy. You know, when you got your energy directed in one direction, you know, it's just like, you know, you throwing down, you fighting or whatever. Like, I see kids out there today, and I'm like, yo, I'll knock you out. You know what I mean? Like, they're throwing these, and they're going that way. Guy. They're not breathing. They're not, you know what I mean? They don't know what they're doing.
Somebody in the audience said, nah. I don't know.
But it, you know, they lack that focused energy. You know what I mean? Like that focused energy, because they're angry, they're emotional, they're this. Yeah. So they don't really know what they're doing. And I think the same thing happens in life, where we're so led by our emotions, and we don't have that what I want to become. We don't have that this is where I want to end up. This is where I'm going to end up. That determination that they end up quitting. I like a word that Rafi used before. He said, you know, I went on a retreat. And it's crazy that word retreat is what's used to kind of re-energize and reboot. Mm-hmm. Because to retreat usually means to run away from. Mm-hmm. But a retreat, when you use it for yourself, you're running away from the noise to run into the voice that is ultimately going to tell you where it is that you need to be. So we need to take that step backwards to refocus, to kind of reset and understand, okay, this is where I need to be. And it's frustrating at times, like Pastor Rose said, you know, I just bought about, between Anna and myself, we bought how many books on communication? We bought 5 different books on communication. Because like Pastor Rose just said, like I need to perfect what I do. I want to get better at what I do. I need
you to recommend a couple of those 5 books.
And I mean, I wrote books on learning. I wrote books on communicating. I wrote books on connect. I've bought books on connecting, different things. I got a book on psychology, the psychology of learning, because I want to know how to connect with people. I want to be better at it. But you know, certain things happened early this year where frustration kind of set in, and I'm like, I'm not reading these books. Like I bought these books for nothing. She was like, you know, I started sulking like a little kid. You know, she was like, what do you mean you bought the books for nothing? I was like, because I'm not gonna be doing this. She was like, you don't know what you're gonna be doing in a few months. And it kind of refocused me. So I say that to say you need people in your life to hold you accountable to what you're focused to. Yeah. Like a boxer has his trainer, has his corner. You know, the horse, they put these blinders on them so they're able to focus on their lane. Pastor Rowan and I had a conversation. I don't know if you remember a few years back, when you was still rapping, right? You still had that, and he wasn't a normal Christian rapper. Like, he was getting invitations. His CDs were selling. He was sought after. Like
we're gonna play one of his songs at the end.
He was there.
You know, I still get royalty checks.
It's crazy. He was doing his thing, but he was pastoring. And we had a conversation. I don't know if you remember, where I was like, the time is gonna come where you're gonna have to pick one of the two. Yeah. And that was I don't know how you felt emotionally with super that combo.
Yeah, I remember.
And you know, but I was able to see like how great this pastor, you know, I knew he wanted it. He had shared that with me. So I knew the amount of focus it was going to take. Right? Because I mean, People think pastoring is easy. That's why I get frustrated when people criticize a pastor getting paid. Because I'm like, bro, a pastor is a communicator, is a marriage counselor, is a children's counselor, is all of these things in one.
Yep.
Where you pay $200 if you go to a counselor. If you go with your insurance to a counselor, you're going to pay $200 for a 1 hour session.
I have a friend of mine that takes me out to eat every month. Every month. I love him. Name is Charlie. And we've been doing this for 4 years. Every month he's like, hey, pastor, are you free? He goes, Friday, let's go. Meet me at that. And he for 5 years, he's never let me pay. And he's taking me to the best of restaurants. And I'm like, yo, let me pay. He's like, I will never let you pay. He goes, you crazy? This session right here easily cost me $200. Easily. I go to he goes, you help me. You know, so yeah, we go to it's
so there's so many demands and pulls. So that's the thing with focus. Focus helps. You're gonna be pulled. Life is gonna pull us. You know what I mean? Like
what are some of those things that you might get pulled by?
A new relationship, children, a new job, sickness. You know, limitations might come to your body that don't, that force you to do things differently. Going out. Events, work,
a health issue.
Somebody dies. There's so many different things that can pull you in different directions. So you need to have I believe purpose becomes a magnet.
Yeah.
You know, that it's the magnet is there. So yeah, you can be drawn away from a magnet, but as long as you in the same zone, you're gonna be pulled right back into it.
You know what's funny? When you're in that step, when you're focused, the thing that you're weakest to pulls you.
Yeah, it pulls.
That's what pulls your distraction the most. That's like when you're in that moment where you're seeing something change and you're focused and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. That thing that you're weak to always comes like, boom, presents itself. Let's see how strong you are. Let's see how focused you are now.
Yo, I'm determined. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to lose 20 pounds. Cheesecake comes by. Boom.
Let's see how focused you are now.
It's so true because focus comes attached to, like we've stated it comes attached to the sacrifice. Yeah. It comes attached to the willingness to be able to. Ultimately, this is what focus is. Focus is being able to say no to good because you know that best is still available. Yeah. It's being able to say no to chilling for 2 hours because you know how much you can accomplish in those 2 hours. It's being able to say no to working that second job because you know it's going to draw you away from, investing in your gift, investing in what you want to do in the long term. Yeah. Like a lot of these entrepreneurs now, they had a job. But then what they did is when they got out of their job from 5 to 2 in the morning, they perfected their craft. So what we didn't see what was going on in the background. Like Olympians, we see them once every 4 years. What you think they're doing in those 4 years? Sleeping?
Sure.
Chilling? Like
that's facts.
Doing nothing? Working at shop right now? They're perfecting their craft. Sure. They're working. They're hustling. So for 4 years, they practice for one event.
Yeah. That's college right there.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's focus.
Yeah.
It's focus. And the Bible says that there's a verse that I want to read that talks about, it kind of uses this terminology about Olympians and this and that. And it's found in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. And he says, we all know that when there's a race, all the runners bolt for the finish line, but only one takes the prize. When you run for the prize. Athletes in training are very strict with themselves, exercising self-control over desires, and for what? For a wreath that soon withers and is crushed and simply forgotten? That is not our race. We run for the crown that we will wear for eternity. And then look at these next verses. He says, so I don't run aimlessly. And the Message version says, there's no more sloppy living for me. There's no more sloppy living for me. I don't run aimlessly. In other words, I have an aim, right? I have something I'm focusing on. He says, I don't let my eyes drift off the finish line. I can't let it drift towards the distraction. I can't let it drift towards what's good because what's best is right in front of me. It's right there. If you can see it, you can have it. If you can see it, you can have it. But are you willing to do what it takes to get it? Right? And so he says, I don't let my eyes drift off the finish line. He says, when I box, I don't throw punches in the air.
Aimlessly, yeah.
I don't throw punches in the air. He says, I discipline my body and I make it my slave so that after everything and after I preach the gospel to others, I would still be qualified to win the prize. In other words, you know, he's stating the same thing. The Apostle Paul wrote this, by the way, in the New Testament section of the Bible. But what he's encouraging us to do is to have this focus that is me focus first. And again, he's talking about God. But when I say me focus, it's I can't change Pastor O. I can't change Chico. I can't change Anna. I can't change Fernando. I can't change my kids. I could only work on me.
Yeah.
With God's help, I can only change me. But I fully understand that if I can change me, my perspective changes. Yeah. And all of a sudden my world changed. So when it comes to focus, you know, I gotta focus on that purpose. I gotta focus on that prize. And for Fernando, for you for a while, that prize was your house. You had to focus. I remember there were times you couldn't come here because there was something great. There was that focus. You know, but now you have your first house. You got to focus on that second. Why? Because that's what focus is. Once you get it, that's only a seed to what you can still get. Like Pastor Rowe, he's a pastor now. But and that's great. Staten Island, that's gonna happen like this, because the pieces are in place. I see where you are. Like I hadn't been to his church for a few years. When I went there, like I was emotional. Because I was preaching with his group when they were in a living room.
Yeah.
So when you see all of a sudden you're in a school and you're like, yo.
What's the name of the church?
Christ Uncensored House of Worship, Kuhau, CUHWHOW.com. So you know when you go by the school and you see signs pointing to his church, when you go in and there's like 5 people saying hello. When you go in, there's a stand for this and a stand for welcoming and a stand for the children and everything is organizing. Bing, bing, bing. And then you go inside, there's lights going into the place. There's a curtain. There's sound system. Everything is in place. People put these things in place. And then I finally get to him. And he's the same one he was when he was in the living room. So when I see all this and I'm like, wow, the power. That's why when I wanted to talk about focus, I didn't think about anyone else. I had to bring him.
Wow.
Because I know how far focus has gotten him. So I know that Staten Island is going to happen. What's your goal after that?
Yeah.
Multiplication. I got to have a church over here and a church over there.
Yeah.
Because you got to keep going.
To keep the focus.
In order to keep your focus. Because if your only focus is in getting this bottle of water, once you get this bottle of water and drink it, you got to find something else that's going to get you thirsty enough to reach for something else.
Refocus.
Yeah.
You know?
Wait, you said, I mean, you mentioned Jesus, and if you think about Jesus, right, he accomplished out of any human being, like even in most articles, like most websites, if you ask who the most significant man in human history that has ever lived, and it's almost unanimous, secular or, you know,
everyone says the same thing.
They know it's Jesus, right?
Yes.
And he only actually marched in ministry for 3 years, right? If you really think about his life being outlined, the history that has been documented of him essentially has been his birth, 12 years old, and then these 3 years that he lived, and he was the most significant, but he was focused, he understood his purpose, and he prioritized his purpose. And so, you know, it's funny because when you say like, hey, he was the same person. He was the same when you talking about, hey, I went to Roe and he was the same person that it was in the house. And the truth is that that was the same person in heart. right? So, and I think we all start there. We all start at a place like we have something in our heart. Like, what's in your heart? Well, I want this. Like, because you have it in your heart. That's your passion. This is what I want. This is what's in your heart. So your heart's always going to remain the same. The question is, are you going to allow yourself to develop? Right? So even though in heart it's the same purpose, man, the guy that was leading in the house and the guy that's leading now, it's worlds apart. But the heart is still the same.
Yes.
The heart is still, well, I want to pursue my purpose. The heart is still, I want to prioritize what I want to become. Right? But you can't do that without developing, getting the skill set. And then I always use this example. It's like, hey, you could have an idea, but if you don't have the right tools, you cannot accomplish that idea. And if you do have the right tools, but you don't have the right skill set, right? So a hammer could do what? It could destroy a house, or it could build one, right? So you could have the right tool, but if you don't have the skill set for that tool, you can use it for destruction, or you can use it for edification. And so that's part of that focus. So if this is who I see myself as in 5 years, if this is who I see myself as in 2 years, I want to develop that. So let's say in our church, so I'm a pastor, but our leaders in our church know what Pastor Rowe's focus is. So that has also be communicated, right? Because if people don't know your focus, they'll have expectations of you that you're not even supposed to meet.
Wow.
Right? So if I'm a pastor and people don't understand what my focus and what my priorities are, they'll value you more picking up a chair than you sharing the word of God to them.
So good.
Well, I just felt that, right?
Developing stages, because Jesus Christ was Jesus Christ when he was little, but like the Jesus Christ when he was 33 wasn't the Jesus Christ when he was like 9.
Well, absolutely. The Bible says, the Bible says that he grew in stature and wisdom, right?
Yeah.
So that you see even this increase in his own life. And so, so when even the example, you communicate those priorities, you communicate that focus, and then people can have, so like in our church, for me, people know, hey, I have 3 focuses in this church. I have 3 expectations you can have of me. And these are the 3 things. These are the things that I am called to do as the pastor of this church. Everything else is just a cherry on top. Everything else is just an added value. Everything else is just like, yo, I'm glad Pastor O did that too. But my focus, people know, is like, I'm going to preach the word of God. There is nothing more valuable that I can do than preach the word of God. The second thing is that I'm going to develop leaders, right? So I have to add value to myself before I add value to others. So I'm going to develop. And the third thing is I'm going to cast vision. And so that's essentially the mantra of my life, that I'm going to preach the word of God. That's communication. I'm going to develop leaders. That's leadership. And what was the last thing I just said?
Vision.
And then I'm going to cast vision. And so I'm always casting vision. I'm going to inspire people to have a vision for their lives. And I'm going to inspire people to see the vision that God has for them as well. So for me,
I'm sorry, I just cut you off.
no, go ahead.
But how did you came across this calling? Like, how did you know that this was your calling? Because I'm guessing there was a lot of noise prior to all of this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think like, so a few things. I would say that for me, it was from a very young age. So I was a young guy in church, and I remember there was this one moment when I was 17 years old, just turning 18. It was September. I was turning 18 in October. It was around August or September of that year. I believe it was the year 2000. And I remember just sitting in a youth service, and I just remember like God telling me this. It was kind of like a sense. It's not an audible voice, but it was like a sense, and I just heard it this way. It was, people will not hear my word because it doesn't come out of your mouth. And that sense, I don't know why, that did it for me. Like there's people that won't hear my word if you don't speak it. That right there, I don't know why. To me, that's insignificant to so many other people, right? But that phrase, for whatever reason, I call it like these burning bush moments, like the Lord chiseled, like the Lord chiseled his word. I've only had like 3 experiences like that where I felt like God chiseled his word in my heart. Like there's only been maybe about 2 or 3, to be honest. And that was one of them where I felt like God is like this burning bush moment where God was just like, hey, there's people won't because you won't speak it. And I woke up to it. I woke up. And then it was affirmed by you know, the people around me. It's like, hey, God has called you to be a pastor. And then I knew, and then just kind of, again, you know when you know her. You know that, okay, this is what God has called me to do. And so for me, my life verse, the verse that I would get tattooed if I don't have any tattoos, but if once I get my six pack, I'm going to get a sleeve right here. And I'm going to get a sleeve right here. And it's Acts 20:24, which is my life is worth nothing to me unless I use it for completing the mission that's been assigned to me. And so for me, it's like, yeah, what else is life worth, right? Like I use this example, like if I send you to the store and I tell you that, hey man, I need you to get me a Haagen-Dazs ice cream with some pistachios in it, right? And you're like, all right, I'm gonna go get that for you, right? All right, please, that's all I want you to do, Pastor Jose. I need you to go get me a Haagen-Dazs with some pistachio ice cream, right? And I send you to that run to the store. And you go to the store, right? And you're like, all right, cool. And I give you a certain amount of money. You go to the store, and then you come back, you were like, yeah, yo, Ro, I got you some banging Dorito chips. I got you this amazing Coca-Cola sodas, a new flavor. I got you these yodels that you can eat, and I got you a beef patty with cheese and cocoa bread. Those are all great things. Those are awesome things that you were able to get for me. But you still missed out on the mission. You still missed out on the thing that I sent you to do, right? Like I sent you to get me so you could. And so I think sometimes life is like that. We get distracted on doing so many other things except the thing that God selected us to do. And Ephesians says that he prepared good works for us to do before the hand of time. Could you think about this? And this blows me away every single time. That before I existed, my intention existed in the heart of God. That blows me away.
You're blowing me away right now.
Before I ever existed,
Yes.
God's intention for me existed.
How will you find your intention?
Well, I think that's part of it too. Like that's a journey in it by itself, right? I think that God speaks primarily through His Word. Number one, I feel like God speaks. Number two, in your knower, and number three, through the mouth of people that are qualified to speak into your life. So that's important, right? Because we got the wrong circle. And so those three things have really helped me. I always use kind of like this thing. Hey, what does the Word of God say? What does the Word of God say about it? What do I sense in my spirit about it? Like that knower factor. Mm-hmm. What do the people that I trust say about it? And those three things really kind of center me. I like to use this, like our purpose is found in the pocket of our specific purpose is found in the pocket of God's general purpose. So like we're never gonna like we only want our specific purpose, right? We only want that. It's like, but you don't understand. It's like I remember I lost my wallet one time and I went crazy looking for it. Like I was looking for it everywhere in my lawn. I drove to my mother's house because that's where I went. I looked for it in her lawn. I looked for it in her house. I looked for it all over the room that I was changing in, and I could not find it. 2 days, could not find that thing. And I spent hours looking for it. And then she calls me, Rolando. And she's like, you know where it was? It was in the closet inside one of the suit bags that you must have tried on. And this is what I thought, like, oh, snap. No matter how much I was looking for it in that lawn, I was never going to find it. It was in a specific area, in a specific room, in a specific closet, in a specific hanger, in a specific bag. And here's where it's not. It's not outside that house. It's not outside that room. And so we could be looking for the right thing in the wrong place. And if we're looking for our purpose in the wrong place, we're never going to find it. No matter how we could spend our entire lives looking for it. Mm. But if we're not finding it in the general will of God, that's where it's found. It's found in the general. And inside that general will, there is a specific will. The way we become acquainted to God's general will is getting acquainted to God's word. Who God designed humanity to be. And when we know what God designed humanity to be, and through the redemptive purpose of Jesus Christ, we will know our purpose. We will know our purpose.
Wow, that was great.
You could collect the offering now.
Y el pueblo de Dios dice.
Earlier you spoke about leading a spirit-led life. So how important do you think is silence in a spirit-led life?
Silence?
Silence and purpose.
Repeat that question. What was that?
The beautiful young lady behind me just said. No, you're gonna have to say it.
I can repeat it. How important is silence in living a spirit-led
Earlier you
life?
spoke about your priorities, and that was based on living a spirit-led
It ain't coming off.
life. So how
Yeah.
important is silence in
Yeah.
living that spirit-led life, and
Yeah,
how
yeah.
important is purpose in that?
Well, I think that silence with intention is extremely important. Because again, we could spend time in silence without intention and still be distracted, but having that quality of silent time, or what I call it my quiet time. And sometimes, let me be honest, like that has to become a priority. So so sometimes I have to lock myself in the bathroom, turn on the candles, and just spend literally. Sometimes I spend an hour just in the bathroom, locked up. I have children of all ages in my home, and so sometimes I need that quiet time. I have the liberty for the most of the part that my morning is pretty much untouched, but that's important because I think that it's in that quiet space where you allow yourself to discover so much about yourself, about God. As a matter of fact, Caroline Leaf says that in her book, Switch On Your Brain, she talks about the power of meditation and intentional meditation. And obviously we see that all through the scriptures, all through the Psalms, the Bible, the psalmist David talks about.
And it's a big deal in culture now too. Like everyone's kind of up on meditation now. So that's a great thing, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's a God thing.
Yeah. And I think that's also important too, right? Because like I said before, like sometimes we use meditation to deal with a symptom, right? So we wait to have the anxiety. We use the meditation to get rid of the anxiety, and then we stop the meditation. But when you see it from the perspective of, no, I need this quiet time in my life. So even my wife respects the fact that I need this quiet time.
Even if you're happy, even if you're having a great
100%,
time,
yeah.
just use it. And I want to add on to the being silent and finding, go in there with a purpose. Sometimes you go in there with a purpose and you don't get the answer that you were looking for the first time around, and it's okay. Some other things might come up, and it's fine. Come back tomorrow, come back later with the same question and keep asking the same damn question back to back every day if you have to. Because the answer will come, because that's something that I was struggling with too. I went to Ecuador with a purpose and with a question, and I didn't get it until like almost towards the end of my trip. I was kind of scared because I'm like, am I going to ever get this freaking answer? But I got it, and I'm like, yes. But that's because I was persistent with it. So keep asking the question. You might not get it right away the first day, but if you just meditate on it, if you just spend some time in silence and you just dig deep, you might not get the answer the first day. You might get something that's similar to the answer, but not quite it. Until you don't get the answer that feels right in your heart, keep asking it every day.
And something you said, and that I could also couple it with your question is, you spoke about just sticking to certain habits earlier, about how do you kind of stick to a certain habit. Like, the question is, how could I stick to something long enough till it becomes a part of me? It becomes who I am, right? So now if I didn't do this, I would now feel uncomfortable. So it would feel strange for me not to do the practice anymore, because it's already a part of me. It's already who I've become, right? Now it's a good quality who I've become, right?
So it's almost like focus becomes a lifestyle at that point.
Yeah. So it's a quality that I've already embraced. And so, again, referencing back to Caroline Leaf says something is not stitched into your brain until after 62 days. Mm-hmm. And so, but here's the thing: you'll be surprised, Pastor Marquez. You'll be surprised how many human beings, and myself included, how many of us can't do something for 62 days.
So true.
Literally, just try this. I'm going to take 20 minutes every single day. Only, not for the rest of your life, not for the rest of your life. You're just going to do it for 62 days. And see if you can go 62 days with doing the same thing. So I challenged myself. I'm going to go for an hour walk for 62 days. I just wanted to challenge myself. And I was determined no matter what, just to help create I only did that to exercise my focus muscle. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason I did
and
that.
it is a muscle.
Yeah.
It is a muscle. Like, stick with that, because Daniel Goldman, in his book on focus, he got this groundbreaking research, and he talks about how focus is a muscle.
Yeah.
That if you don't exercise it, you'll never be able to focus.
Yeah.
So find something small to focus on, or like what you said, taking a 1 hour walk.
Yeah.
Maybe you start with a 10-minute walk. But do something that helps foster that. That's good that you brought that. That was epic.
And just to see if I could do it. All right, I gotta exercise this muscle. I'm gonna see if I could do this for 62 days, and I'm gonna stick to it. And so again, I'm gonna take 20 minutes of the first thing that I do before I go on my cell phone, which again, anytime you go on your cell phone is always reactive, right? So you're always reacting to something. So imagine that you start your day reacting, not proactive, not with intention, not with what you haven't, reacting to the messages you got, text messages, the emails, the notifications, right? And so I'm going to take 30 days to do this. And Caroline Lee says after 62 days, again, this is neuroscience that has been proven, it starts becoming now hardwired into your brain where you're looking to do it.
And the brain does follow what we give it. You know what I mean? It's a muscle itself. So it's like within the brain that's a muscle, there's other muscles that need to be worked. And when you look at greatness, when you look at Einstein, when you look at Jordan, when you look at Muhammad Ali, when you look at Tom Brady, when you look at, all of these people that were great in their specific field, Michael Jackson, all these people that were great, we looked at them and we said they're odd because they're always alone. Or they're always, they do these things that are awkward or weird.
Yeah.
It wasn't any of that.
No.
It was that they were focused.
Yeah.
They knew what they were about. They knew what they were on this earth for. And they knew that in order to excel, they had to say no to a bunch of things to say yes to that one thing.
Wow.
And I always go back to the saying that always I have to remind myself, because I'm a person that likes to try to juggle multiple things. And I always remember someone saying, you don't want to be a jack of all trades and master of none. You want to become a master of one. And then you eventually can do some of those things that complement what you already mastered. Because we normally start the other way around and do a bunch of things and never get to be that great in one thing, in one area. I just wanted to say before we wrap up, there's something, that it brought back this story I heard from 2014 and 13, when you said, I look at what's important, not urgent. And I never really knew how that went over my head until I heard you say that, because automatically it was like my brain went into those files and said, ooh, you've heard this in a different format. But it was too, I guess, it was too much for where your brain was at that moment, and it just stored that information and kept it there. But you brought that back up when you talked about important and urgency. And I remember the story where Eric Thomas, E.T., was saying, he had to do something for work, and he had to cash a check and send a project over to somebody that he promised he was going to send it. His son went to school, calls him and says, I need you to bring my homework. I left it at home. He is in the middle of, sending. It was like something about a book that he was sending some publishing. Or it was something within that matter. But he had to go somewhere to drop it off to be mailed, and his son was making it like his issue was his, and he says, no. That was important to you, not important to me. And in my head, I said, damn, that sounds harsh. Like, that's your son. And he's like, no, I made a commitment out of my mouth that I was going to get this paper to this person by this time. That was important to me. Your paper is not a priority. It comes after. Your homework comes after I go do what I have to do. And him saying that just brung that urgency and importance. And I think that we lack to that. That's just, I don't want that to go over people's head, because I think that we all struggle with telling the difference between urgent and important, and not feeling bad to put somebody else's important to the side for your important.
That is true, because I there's certain times that I lack focus on something that I have to do because someone asked for my attention and something that could have used my attention.
And that will set you back so many years. You don't understand how much that will set you back to reaching your purpose.
Especially a person like me.
Because of you're in the middle of doing everybody else's things.
And we don't have an unlimited amount or an infinite amount of attention. We just don't. We're not wired that way. And this is why with information overload, with the access that we have to social media, to Twitter, to Facebook, to the internet, and all this information, we have access to the most information of any human species of all time. Yet we're the least intelligent of any human species of all time.
That's because we're digging through that information without intention.
Yes,
and
no
I think
focus.
That,
There's just no focus.
Yeah, what I get from this conversation is that everything we have is a tool. Like you said, it could be it could build something or destroy something. And I think that what I'm getting from just the entire message and for me to wrap it up on my end was, if I'm going to be on social media, be on there with an intention and go in on that intention and out.
Yes.
Because, and you got to look at it that way. When you give social media so much attention, it gives you an opportunity to look at things that you shouldn't be looking at. It gives you the opportunity to just do a bunch of things that are outside of what your intention was in the first place. Because you go from a cat video to seeing how a baby is born, and then from that to some other graphic, and then some sad news, and you're going through a roller coaster of emotions all in 5 minutes. And you just went on there to look up for a recipe that's on BuzzFeed, and you just want to see how you can do that. But you're all caught up an hour in a bunch of videos. Go in with an intention and a discipline and focus to get whatever information you need, take it out, and that's it. Like, if you create a schedule, which is very hard for us to do. It's very hard for me to create a social media schedule. I've been working on doing a post at a certain time, not because of the algorithm. I gave up on the algorithm. I said, like my picture if you want. I don't care. I'm just going to do this because it's a purpose behind it. But now I got to be disciplined on it. As soon as I do that, all right, no more. Unless it connects to whatever else I'm working on. I should not give it all my energy, because during work hours, doing anything, I'm like half and half, on the device that's causing so much distraction.
So good. Yeah, if I can I think I can sum this all up in terms of, like, I don't know who's listening, but I can sum it up in three words, and I think that they're actually coming to me right now. This is why I'm such an anointed preacher. No, I'm just joking. And it's if our focus is to be one that is going to be effective, like, I think that the thing that we have, these three things that we have to really allow it to guide our focus is purpose, right? So who am I becoming? Who am I? What do I want to see, right? It's priorities based upon that purpose, right? So the priorities is, hey, the important over the urgent, right? I got to do what's important towards it, and parameters. I got to say no.
3 Ps again.
Come on, 3 Ps.
The 3 Ps.
Our last episode
I listened to it. And so I had to top that one. So
That was good.
And so when I think about it, it's like, the parameters is like, so even on social media, right? As long as you put a parameter around it, you say, okay, I might do it for enjoyment. That might be in my intention, but I don't want to spend 3 hours on it. I want to spend. So I'm gonna be honest. Like, so for me, I know myself. I have an addictive personality. If I like something, let me tell you, if I like a song, I am drilling that song over, and my wife is like, "Ya estoy harta." Like, I'm done with this thing. Like, I will beat that song down, right? anything that I like. If I like a meal, I will eat that meal for a year straight. I don't know. I just have this. And so for me, I can't watch TV every day. Because if I watch TV every day, I'm just addictive. And especially now that you don't have to wait till the next week to watch the next episode. Every episode leaves you with a cliffhanger. You're like, oh, I'm watching that. Yeah. Oh, I'm watching that. Yeah. And I'm there. I'm 6 hours killing Netflix. Yeah. And so you having those. So for me, my parameter is, okay, Sunday night I watch TV, and Monday is my disconnection day. I disconnect from everything. And so Mondays I take off. I take off. And so those are the times that I do my binge watching. Those are the times that I spend. Tuesday, that's my meeting day. Wednesday's my study day. Thursday is my sermon prep day. Friday I go with my kids. And so, to me, it's kind of like finding that focus within those two. Okay, who do I want to become? That's purpose. My priorities based upon that purpose, right? So I know how to value what's important in my life versus what the next urgent thing is, and lastly, what to say no to. And you might not be able to say yes to everything, but if you know your purpose, you're able to know what you need to say no to. You just I can't do that right now. And what I've discovered is, and this is, if I could just end this, I don't know where we are at time, but we spoke about even relationships. I'm like, man, like, even when we talk about being in a relationship, right? Or I think we're always looking for our significant other. And it's like, we want a relationship from the age we're 12 years old, 13 years old. It's like, yo, that's my boo, that's my girl, and it's like, we don't even know who we are, right? We don't know who we are. We're agreeing to commit ourselves to a relationship based upon just attraction, right? Or attraction, or the way that make me feel, not knowing that you're going to change in a few years, still don't know who you are. And then every gap that you have an expectation of this person to fill. But when you know what your purpose is, so when I got married, right? So my second time, because marriage is only, you can only do marriage twice. But I was just joking. Marriage is one of those things you can only do twice. But when I got married, one of the things I was like, for me, it was, I need to be with someone that can run like I can run. And that's what I would say. I was like, who knows their purpose? And so with Lisa, who, for me, I genuinely say that a lot of people have told me, hey man, we love you and your wife. We would want a relationship that you guys have. But man, you guys don't understand what we do to have this relationship. This relationship is not because we sing Kumbaya around the fireplace. This relationship is cultivated because of purpose, because of priorities, because of our parameters. There's boundaries that her and I have. There's priorities that her and I have. There's intention to that priority we own, and there's purpose behind it. I look at her as a woman of God, as a daughter of God first, before she is my wife. And so these expectations that I have of her, if I can't find them within God's purpose and intention for my life, here's the reason that God said that he created Eve. He said, man, it's not good for man to be alone. In other words, we're to be companions, that she ought to be a helper. And I talk to men, I tell this to men all the time. It's like, you need a helper for what? If you don't know who you are,
you ain't doing nothing.
If you ain't doing nothing,
what you need help
then you
with?
don't need a relationship. You don't need a companion. He gave, I love Miles Monroe, right? He says, he gave Eve a person who knew God's voice, who had a job, and who was already toiling the ground, right? And knew how to share God's word, right? So he was already on mission. And so I say it from that perspective too. Like, you would find relationships so much easier when you know who you are, when you know what your purpose is. And don't get me wrong, it's nice having a boo, right? It's nice having someone by your side. It's nice. That's all cute. That's all good. But that's not lasting material. That's not something that is what is that holds a relationship together. What holds a relationship together is understand. You know how many times I'm telling you, I know my wife would have left me already if we didn't know our purpose. I know it, but there's a focus there. Now, don't get me wrong. I adore her. Like, I love her. I would give my life for Lisa, and I know she would do the same. But if she's watching, when she watches this, but. For me, it's just a privilege. For me, it's just a privilege that we get to do life together.
Man,
she's on purpose. I'm on purpose, and we get to join our races together, and that's a beautiful experience.
Whatever minister joined you two together must have been like,
man, it was this
super
good-looking dude named Jose Marquez.
Yo, this dude got married in a hurricane, by the way.
I did.
I was driving into a
Talk about
out of a
focus.
hurricane. I was focused on getting them married. But I want to end it with just 5 practical things, very practical things that I got from a book called Free to Focus that I think will be super helpful in helping us accomplish those 3 things that Pastor Ro mentioned. Is number 1, acknowledge that your resources are finite. You want to focus, you have to acknowledge that your resources are finite. Number 2, determine who needs access and who doesn't. Number 3, let your calendar say no for you. Number 4, adopt a strategy for responding to requests. And number 5, accept the fact that you will be misunderstood.
Wow.
I think all of these things, I mean, loaded podcast. Couldn't have picked a better guest.
Wow.
I think it was amazing.
My privilege.
And I'm so blessed, man. Like when I think about who we've had come through, you know, people that I consider friends and that I love, I'm like, yo, like I'm really blessed. Like when I think about Phil and Shanti, when I think about Pastor George, when I think about Pastor Ro, Greg and Sherry, you know, just all Ray and Serge, like all these people that have been able to come through and just bless the airwaves and bless our lives. And you guys, I mean, you guys bring so much value to my life. I thank you guys.
Likewise.
You know, Anna's smacking me back into reality sometimes.
Rick
You know, like we
for
just
coming through too.
we just need all this in our lives, man. If we're gonna focus, I really feel it's hard to do it alone. You know what I mean? You need God first and foremost. You need someone by your side to help hold you accountable, and people by you to drive you in that direction of the thing that you're focusing on.
Awesome, man.
Love it. This is not an ad, but I watched this Netflix series called The Messiah. You guys aware of it?
Yeah, I saw it.
Let me tell you something. Yeah. You know what I loved about it? That for some reason I thought it was going to be like this conspiracy. Like, oh, okay, they're just going to make it like this is all fake. And then there's moments where I'm questioning and I'm like, oh, this is what it would be like if Jesus was right in here, right now, in this time. Because of certain things that just go on, and you're just like following the storyline of Jesus from the Bible and here, and you're like, what? I mean, I enjoyed it. It had me glued because I wanted to see the end. I wanted to see, you know, where it was going to go. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone.
Please don't.
Watch it. I say watch it, yeah. I say watch it. I'm excited to see if I'm not sure if they signed for a new season. If they did, I'm waiting for it. It's real good. So to close out, thank you, Pastor Ro, for sitting down with us, for having this long, that doesn't feel so long conversation because it went amazing. I was just glued to both of you guys, all of you guys speaking, honestly. Ralphie, Fernando, Pastor Jose, and yourself. Everything was great.
And if you can share your location, name of the church, where exactly it's located, time of service.
Sure. We're in Staten Island. Our location is 195 Daniel Low Terrace, Staten Island, New York, 10301. And we meet there on Sundays at 11 a.m.
Nice.
Sundays, 11 a.m. Yeah, so you also look us up for any more information, our events, any special events that we have at kuhow.com. That's CUHOW.com.
Until next time, thank you. Let's get it.